Torbjorn was born 40 years ago at the Continental Divide. His father was Andreas Mudpike, a ginger-headed dwarf. He was a miner his whole life. His mother was Uhtred Anviljaw. She had a shop that sold mining equipment. That is how they both met and got married. When they first saw the newborn Torbjorn, they said, "He's so adorable. I think he'll be a very clever boy, and he will be able to achieve everything that his mind sets to." But they were so wrong. It turned out that Torbjorn was thirsty for battles and glory. Even from a very young age, he was getting into lots of fights with the excuse that he wanted glory. A good example of this ideology was when Torbjorn was 12 years old and he got into the fight with the Silver Wolf Gang. The Silver Wolf Gang was a bunch of guys, around 6 to 8 people, who were bullying kids, harassing women, and vandalising shops. One day, when Torbjorn was returning from school, he saw the leader of the gang. His name was Orikuri Wolffang. The 2 other guys harassing some girls. Torbjorn went to the leader and said, "Hey, wolf pussy, fight someone in your league." And then he punched him in the guts. After an epic 3v1 battle, Torbjorn managed to win the fight in a few minutes, and he said to the girls, "Ladies, don't worry, because I'm here to save you. Now go and tell everyone my glorious actions." That's how Torbjorn went into a non-stop war with the Silver Wolf Gang. Torbjorn became legend in the Continental Divide, with lots of names. Torbjorn the Reckless, Torbjorn the Stray Dog, but the most famous was Torbjorn the Great. For the next few years, Torbjorn was gaining a lot of fame for his abilities and his stupidity. He was so popular that his name managed to reach the military generals of the area. One of the most glorious achievements of Torbjorn was when he was 15. He managed to kick the Silver Wolf Gang out of the Continental Divide. It was a peaceful evening when Torbjorn was heading to his mother's shop to pay her a visit. Suddenly he heard loud voices from the place that the shop was. He started running. The moment he reached the shop, he saw all 8 members of the Silver Wolf Gang throwing rocks at his mother's shop. His father was protecting his mother with a mining cart. Then Torbjorn went mad and said, "Hey, Silver Wolf kittens! I'm right here. Come to me and see my big, long glory." They all laughed at him, and Okuri said, "Hey, dwarf shit, you think you can defeat 8 humans? If you manage to win against us, we will leave the Continental Divide." Torbjorn, of course, accepted the challenge, and the Silver Wolf Gang had a humiliating loss. Then he went to Okuri and said, "Hey, I told you I would show you my glory." And then he removed his pants and showed him his 9-inch dong. "Now get the fuck out of my city, and if I see you again, I will use my glory on you." The next day, everyone was talking about Torbjorn the Great and his massive achievement. General Durfat Chaosfoot saw the incident in a newspaper, and they decided to enlist Torbjorn to the army. So they sent him a letter that said, "Torbjorn the Great, we want you to join the army. Tomorrow at 11 a.m, come to the nearest barracks." When Torbjorn read the letter, he was very happy, and he told his parents, and they were both very proud of him. The next day, while he was going to the barracks, he heard a voice that said, "Hey, Torbjorn the Glory Stealer." The man who called him was a human boy of his age. His name was Marbo. He was kind of famous for fighting the Silver Wolf Gang also. Then Marbo said, "Come on, dwarf, fight me. You stole my glory, and now I have to show who is the man of the Continental Divide." Torbjorn was not able to deny such a challenge, so they started fighting. 3 hours passed, but they still both fought like stray dogs. Then General Durfat Chaosfoot was confused. He was sure that Torbjorn wouldn't deny his offer, so he sent a few soldiers to find him and bring him back to the barracks. After a few minutes, the soldiers found Torbjorn and Marbo fighting. While they were fighting, they both screamed nonsense like, "Die, you glory stealer! And shut the fuck up, unglorious human!" Then they both knocked each other out with a single punch. The soldiers were very confused, so they decided to bring them both back to the barracks. Almost 2 hours later, they both recovered in the barracks in front of General Durfat. The first thing they did after waking up was to fight whoever won that fight. Then General Durfut shouted in a fury, "Both of you, shut the fuck up!" and said, "I have called you here because we want to train you as soldiers. You both have a lot of potential, so if you want glory, tomorrow we start." Of course, they both accepted their offer, and that's how Torbjorn and Marbo became soldiers and friends. The training lasted 3 years and went very smoothly. Every day they were exercising, learning tactics, abilities, and as always, Torbjorn and Marbo were fighting to see who was the better man. Most of the time, Torbjorn won the fights, or they were knocking others out at the same time. With every loss, Marbo was more angry and determined to win against Torbjorn. But they were not fighting all the time. One good example was one day after training, Torbjorn, Marbo, and Thumnoli Goldhand decided to go to a bar for a couple of drinks. When they went to the bar and took their first drink, Torbjorn said, "Guys, let's make a toast to our glory." Then they started drinking and drinking and drinking until they were wasted. While they were trying to get back to the barracks, Marbo said, "Hey, ta dwarf, I have to tell you that I want to be like you, and I think we will be good friends." After 3 hours, they somehow managed to get back to the barracks. After their military training, they started going mercenary missions. One of the most interesting battles he fought was with an orc army. For some reason, Torbjorn and Marbo reached the orc area a day earlier than the rest of the army. When they arrived, they found a camp with 50 orc soldiers. Then, they did what a logical person would never do. They charged the camp by themselves. The next day, when the army arrived at the point, they saw Torbjorn and Marbo fighting on a pile of dead orcs. They were fighting about who had killed the most. After the fight, they sat on the leader of the orcs, Matuk, who was not dead, and Torbjorn said to Marbo, "Hey Marbo, I know we have our arguments about who is the most glorious, but I really think you are a very good fighter, and I hope we never get separated from our unit. You are really my friend." While this was happening, Matuk was whispering, "I will avenge my brothers. I will," but unfortunately, after this insane fight, General Durfut decided to place them into different units, because when he asked them why they charged 2v50, they said, "We had to prove who was the most brave and glorious of all soldiers. That's why we killed them barehanded." General Chaosfoot was visibly confused. As the years went by, Torbjorn the Great became very famous all over the world for his brave but reckless actions. Bards would sing songs and say tales about the brave dwarf. You could say that Torbjorn became a legend. One of the most famous stories is the reason that he wears his light green mankini. The tale says that everything began in one of his missions. He was assigned to kill a large group of orcs that was raiding an area near Damascus. At this time, Torbjorn was wearing armour. After hours of fighting with the orcs, Torbjorn's army decided to fall back to recover. But brave Torbjorn stayed. He said, "Soldiers, go back. I will hold them here. Go and spread my glorious action." When the army arrived in the morning to the place where they had left Torbjorn, they saw him standing on a mountain of dead orcs, and he was screaming nonsense while the sun rose behind him. He was unharmed, but he was naked. Then a legend says that while he was at his tent and was resting, he got a visit by a very horny, fat, ugly fairy that looked revolting, and her name was Grubula. She gave him a magic mankini in order to be able to show his 9-inch glory without being completely naked or defenseless. One day, Torbjorn learned that Thumnoli Goldhand, an ex-comrade, that his friend and ally Marbo had been killed in action. His friend told him that he knows a tavern that the comrades of Marbo were going to. He gave him a map that showed where the tavern was. Then, Torbjorn decided to go to the tavern in order to learn more information about his death and where he can find his grave so he could pay him a visit.